What would you do if your HOA suddenly fined you $500 for parking in your own driveway? That's exactly what happened to Garrett, a quiet engineer who just wanted to live in peace. But the HOA president had no idea Garrett wasn't going down without a fight. Marcus Garrett, a 42-year-old structural engineer, pulls his pristine red Chevrolet Silverado into his driveway at 1247 Oakwood Circle after another 12-hour day designing bridge supports. The truck isn't just transportation, it's his mobile office, equipped with engineering software, surveying equipment, and technical manuals that make his $120,000 annual salary possible. He's lived in Maple Ridge Estates for 3 years, always parking exactly the same way, never receiving a single complaint. The next morning, Marcus discovers a fluorescent orange violation notice zip-tied to his truck's door handle. The citation, signed by HOA President Victoria Sterling, states, "Violation, commercial vehicle parked in residential driveway overnight. Fine, $500. Deadline, 48 hours or additional penalties apply." Marcus stares at the notice in disbelief. His personal pickup truck, which he uses for weekend camping trips and Home Depot runs, is somehow being classified as a commercial vehicle. Victoria Sterling emerges from her luxury sedan like a general, inspecting troops, dressed in an expensive pantsuit despite the early morning hour. She approaches Marcus with a clipboard and an air of absolute authority. "Mr. Garrett, I trust you received your citation. Pickup trucks create an unsavory working-class aesthetic that degrades our property values. Our covenant clearly prohibits commercial vehicles in driveways." Marcus, still processing the absurdity, gestures toward his truck. "Mrs. Sterling, this is my personal vehicle. I'm not running a business. I use it to get to my engineering job and take my kids camping on weekends." Victoria's smile turns predatory. The covenant doesn't distinguish between personal and commercial use of trucks. If you can't comply with community standards, perhaps you'd be happier in a less refined neighborhood. As Victoria walks away, Marcus notices she's photographing other driveways with her phone, documenting a neighbor's work van and another resident's SUV with company decals. He realizes this isn't about aesthetics, it's about power and profit. The sick feeling in his stomach tells him this is just the beginning of something much worse. Over the following week, Marcus watches in growing horror as Victoria's citation campaign spreads through the neighborhood like a plague. Tom Chen, a local plumber who's lived here for 8 years, receives a $500 fine for his clearly marked work van. Maria Santos, a florist who converted her Honda Pilot for flower deliveries, gets hit with a $750 penalty for repeat commercial vehicle violations. Even elderly Mr. Patterson receives a citation for his 20-year-old pickup truck that hasn't moved from his driveway in months. Marcus begins tracking the fines systematically, creating a spreadsheet with violation dates, residents affected, and penalty amounts. The pattern becomes clear. Victoria targets working-class residents with practical vehicles, while ignoring wealthy neighbors with luxury SUVs and sports cars. She's generated over $8,000 in fines in just 2 weeks, money that supposedly goes toward community improvements that never seem to materialize. The breaking point comes when Marcus witnesses Victoria confronting Jenny Walsh, a single mother and medical technician who drives a compact pickup truck to transport her wheelchair-bound son's medical equipment. Victoria stands in Jenny's driveway at 7 a.m., blocking her path to work, demanding immediate payment of a $500 fine. Jenny, tears streaming down her face, explains that her truck is specially equipped for her son's needs and represents her only transportation. "That's not my concern," Victoria replies coldly. "Rules apply to everyone equally. If you can't afford to live here properly, there are apartments across town that might better suit your ... circumstances." Marcus intervenes, helping Jenny calm down and offering to research the violation process. But privately, He's furious Victoria isn't just enforcing rules. She's systematically harassing families who can't fight back. That evening, Marcus sits at his kitchen table, surrounded by the HOA's governing documents, municipal housing codes, and state vehicle registration laws. His engineering mind, trained to find structural weaknesses and design flaws, begins analyzing the HOA's legal foundation. He has a growing suspicion that Victoria's citation campaign isn't just morally wrong, legally indefensible. Marcus approaches the research like an engineering project, breaking down the HOA's legal structure into component parts. He discovers that the original 1998 covenant contains vague language about maintaining community appearance standards, but includes specific exceptions for vehicles legally registered and in working condition. The key phrase buried in subsection 4.2.7 states that parking restrictions apply only to inoperable vehicles. Recreational vehicles exceeding 25 feet, or vehicles engaged in active commercial use within the community. His pickup truck, legally registered and used for personal transportation, clearly falls outside these restrictions. More importantly, Marcus realizes that Victoria has been interpreting the covenant selectively, creating additional rules that don't exist in the actual legal document. She's been using intimidation and legal-sounding language to convince residents they have no choice but to pay. Marcus schedules a meeting with David Park, a neighbor who works as a municipal attorney. David reviews Marcus's research and confirms his suspicions. The HOA has been issuing citations without legal authority. Victoria's basically running a protection racket, David explains. She's counting on people being too intimidated or financially desperate to challenge her. But legally, these fines are worthless. Armed with this knowledge, Marcus begins quietly approaching neighbors who've received citations. He starts with Tom Chen, explaining the legal situation over coffee in Tom's kitchen. Tom's relief quickly turns to anger. "You mean I paid $500 for nothing? She basically stole from me." Marcus nods grimly. "And from everyone else who couldn't afford to fight back." The conversation with Maria Santos proves even more revealing. She explains that Victoria approached her privately after issuing the fine, suggesting that the penalty could be reduced or eliminated if Maria agreed to use Victoria's daughter's catering company for neighborhood events. "It felt like extortion," Maria admits, "but I was afraid to say anything. She controls everything around here." Marcus realizes this isn't just about parking citations. Victoria has been using her position to create a complex system of financial pressure and personal favors. She's turned the HOA presidency into a personal business opportunity, exploiting her neighbors' fear of legal action and social ostracism. Marcus organizes a secret meeting at Jenny Walsh's house, carefully inviting residents who've been targeted by Victoria's citation campaign. The gathering includes Tom Chen, Maria Santos, elderly Mr. Patterson, and 6 other families who've collectively paid over $4,000 in questionable fines over the past year. The atmosphere is tense. Many are afraid that challenging Victoria will result in even more harassment. Jenny serves coffee, while Marcus presents his research, using his engineering presentation skills to break down the legal situation in clear, understandable terms. He shows them the original covenant language, explains their rights under state law, and outlines the specific ways Victoria has exceeded her authority. "She's been counting on us not knowing our rights," Marcus explains, "but knowledge is power." The group's fear gradually transforms into determination as they share their experiences. Mr. Patterson reveals that Victoria threatened to have his truck towed if he didn't pay his fine within 24 hours, despite his fixed income and the truck's sentimental value as his late wife's vehicle. Tom Chen admits he borrowed money from his brother to pay the citation, damaging a family relationship over what he now knows was a fraudulent fine. Maria Santos drops the biggest bombshell. She's discovered that Victoria's daughter's catering company has been receiving exclusively no-bid contracts for all neighborhood events, despite other residents offering competitive services. She's been using HOA funds to funnel business to her family. Maria explains. I have the invoices to prove it. The meeting concludes with a unanimous decision to challenge Victoria's authority at the next HOA board meeting. Marcus volunteers to serve as their spokesperson, using his professional credibility and research skills to present their case. David Park agrees to attend as legal counsel, while Jenny offers to document everything with her phone. They're no longer isolated victims, they're an organized community, ready to fight back. The group establishes a communication network, with Tom creating a group text and Maria designing simple flyers to inform other neighbors about their rights. They realize that Victoria's power depends entirely on fear and ignorance. Once the community understands the truth, her authority evaporates. The week leading up to the monthly HOA meeting becomes an intensive campaign of community education and evidence gathering. Marcus works late into each night, preparing a comprehensive presentation that combines legal analysis with financial documentation of Victoria's abuse of power. He creates visual aids showing the timeline of citations, the selective enforcement patterns, and the specific covenant violations Victoria herself has committed. David Park helps Marcus understand the procedural aspects of HOA governance, explaining that board members have fiduciary duties to act in the community's best interest. Victoria's use of her position for personal financial gain and selective rule enforcement violates these fundamental obligations. You're not just challenging individual fines, David explains. You're exposing systematic corruption that could invalidate her entire tenure as president. Meanwhile, Maria Santos and Jenny Walsh go to war, sharing information with neighbors who haven't been directly affected by the citation campaign. They discover that Victoria's influence extends far beyond parking enforcement. She's been making unilateral decisions about landscaping contracts, security services, and maintenance work, all without proper board approval or competitive bidding. The canvassing reveals another disturbing pattern. Longtime residents who've questioned Victoria's decisions have faced systematic harassment through selective rule enforcement. The head received citations for unapproved garden decorations after questioning landscaping expenses. The Patels were fined for excessive holiday lighting after suggesting alternative security providers. Victoria has been using her position to punish dissent and maintain control. By Friday evening, Marcus's coalition has grown to include over 30 families, nearly half the neighborhood. They've documented systematic abuse of power, financial misconduct, and procedural violations that paint a clear picture of corruption. More importantly, they've transformed from isolated, intimidated residents into an organized community with shared knowledge and common purpose. The final preparation involves role-playing the actual confrontation. David coaches Marcus on parliamentary procedure and legal presentation, while Jenny practices operating the recording equipment. Tom and Maria prepare to distribute documented evidence to all attendees. They know Victoria will try to control the narrative, but they're ready for her tactics. The week leading up to the monthly HOA meeting becomes an intensive campaign of community education and evidence gathering. Marcus works late into each night, preparing a comprehensive presentation that combines legal analysis with financial documentation of Victoria's abuse of power. He creates visual aids showing the timeline of citations, the selective enforcement patterns, and the specific covenant violations Victoria herself has committed. David Park helps Marcus understand the procedural aspects of HOA governance, explaining that board members have fiduciary duties to act in the community's best interest. Victoria's use of her position for personal financial gain and selective rule enforcement violates these fundamental obligations. You're not just challenging individual fines, David explains. You're exposing systematic corruption that could invalidate her entire tenure as president. Meanwhile, Maria Santos and Jenny Walsh go to war, sharing information with neighbors who haven't been directly affected by the citation campaign. They discover that Victoria's influence extends far beyond parking enforcement. She's been making unilateral decisions about landscaping contracts, security services, and maintenance work, all without proper board approval or competitive bidding. The canvassing reveals another disturbing pattern. Longtime residents who've questioned Victoria's decisions have faced systematic harassment through selective rule enforcement. The received citations for unapproved garden decorations after questioning landscaping expenses. The Patels were fined for excessive holiday lighting after suggesting alternative security providers. Victoria has been using her position to punish dissent and maintain control. By Friday evening, Marcus's coalition has grown to include over 30 families, nearly half the neighborhood. They've documented systematic abuse of power, financial misconduct, and procedural violations that paint a clear picture of corruption. More importantly, they've transformed from isolated, intimidated residents into an organized community with shared knowledge and common purpose. The final preparation involves role-playing the actual confrontation. David coaches Marcus on parliamentary procedure and legal presentation, while Jenny practices operating the recording equipment. Tom and Maria prepare to distribute documented evidence to all attendees. They know Victoria will try to control the narrative, but they're ready for her tactics. Faced with overwhelming evidence and a united community, Victoria's authority collapses completely. Board members Janet Rodriguez and Frank Morrison, who had been quietly complicit in Victoria's decisions, quickly distance themselves and call for her immediate resignation. The board was never consulted about these enforcement policies, Janet claims, though several residents loudly dispute her denial of responsibility. The community votes unanimously to void all parking citations issued under Victoria's unauthorized interpretations, requiring the HOA to refund over $12,000 to affected residents. Additionally, they establish new governance procedures, requiring board approval for all policy changes and competitive bidding for all contracts exceeding $500. Victoria attempts a final power play, threatening legal action against defamatory allegations. But David Park calmly explains that documented evidence of misconduct isn't defamation, it's accountability. 3 months later, the transformed community has elected Marcus as HOA president, with Jenny Walsh serving as treasurer and Tom Chen heading the new oversight committee. They've implemented transparent budgeting, monthly community newsletters, and regular town halls where residents can voice concerns without fear of retaliation. The parking citations that started the rebellion are now a cautionary tale about the importance of community vigilance. The financial investigation reveals that Victoria's misconduct extended beyond the catering contracts she had been collecting administrative fees for various services without board authorization and using HOA equipment for personal projects. The total recovery amount exceeds $8,000, which the community votes to use for playground improvements and emergency lighting that actually benefits residents. Marcus's red pickup truck still sits proudly in his driveway, but now it represents something more than personal transportation. It's a symbol of standing up to bullying and the power of community organization. Neighbors who once avoided eye contact now gather regularly for block parties and collaborative projects. The HOA has transformed from a tool of control into a genuine community organization. 6 months after the confrontation, Marcus reflects on the experience while washing his truck in the driveway. Activity Victoria once tried to ban as unsightly maintenance work. Children play in the improved playground, funded by recovered misappropriated funds, while neighbors chat over the fence about upcoming community projects. The difference between fear-based compliance and willing cooperation, Marcus realizes, is the difference between a neighborhood controlled by one person's ego and a true community where everyone has a voice. The story concludes with Marcus receiving a text from a resident in a neighboring subdivision. "We heard about what you did with your HOA president. Could you help us with ours? We think she's been stealing from us too. Marcus smiles, knowing that standing up to one bully has created a template for others. Sometimes the most important engineering project isn't building bridges over water, building bridges between people who thought they were powerless alone.